Jace, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here. It's good to be back and see what's going on. Want to take a little bit of your time and just kind of go a little bit to the very beginning, actually, to get this started. So I want to talk about the genesis, the beginning of how did the idea for Hill Helicopters actually take shape for you for the first time?
Yeah, well, I think as I'm a child of the 1980s, as you know, and I grew up when Airwolf was on the TV and Knight Rider was on the TV and tech was really cool. And so I grew up always being fascinated by that kind of stuff. And I've always been totally captivated by the idea of helicopters and a helicopter that you could own, something that looked cool and was fast and gave you access to this whole new world of places where you could go and things you could do. And I've just been infatuated by that idea my entire life. And practically as soon as I could afford it, I started having trial lessons and then went and got my helicopter license. And as I started to become involved with the helicopters that were available at the time, I was acutely aware of the big difference in sort of perceived quality and build standard and in the quality of the industrial design of what was available against what you could get in essentially any other walk of life, be it cars, motorcycles, speedboats, anything. Look at anything, and they were all at a different level to where GA aircraft were. And I always knew that I could do better than that. And so that was really where the idea for, well, the awareness of the opportunity came from. And then the idea for the aircraft was quite a protracted story in its own right, because if you set out to design something, you set out to design it through the lens of your own life, right? So I first started thinking about designing this helicopter when I was in my late teens. And of course, the first thing you're acutely aware of when you want to learn to fly helicopters in your late teens is everything is so expensive. And so it's all about how do you get the cost down. So at that point, I was thinking about how do you make a small helicopter, a single-seater or a two-seater that anybody with a decent job could afford. And I went quite a long way down the road of developing a very Gucci-looking two-seater with a proper rotor system and a modern cockpit and what have you. And it was actually a fairly well-known flying instructor over here in the UK that made the point to me. He says, look out over my hangar. We've got 30 R44s here, flying social, right? Yeah. Everybody, private pilots and recreational pilots want to fly together. And so that really made a step change in what I was trying to do, because then it was, okay, this isn't about just getting up into the air at any cost. This is about how do you make flying into a recreational thing? How do you be able to weave a helicopter into your life? So how do you use it to get to work, or how do you use it to fly between customer sites? How do you manage to take the kids and their bags and their surfboards and their golf clubs or whatever somewhere where you want to go? And so the idea at that point initially swung towards a four-seater and something like a more modern version of the best-selling helicopter that's out there at the moment. But I very rapidly became aware that you just couldn't get to the performance levels that I felt it needed just using an off-the-shelf piston engine. And when you go the next level, then the whole world opens up in front of you, and that was when we gelled on what HX50 has become today.
Just give me 30 seconds of your time. I want to invite you to the Hill Helicopters exclusive presentation. This is a presentation that Ruben and I do online. It takes 30 minutes, and we walk you through all the details, the specs, the performance of the helicopter, as well as the development stage that we're at. And at the end of the presentation, we give you an opportunity to pre-order the aircraft now under special conditions. If you want to book one, just go to hillhelicopters.com/schedule, and I'll see you there. So do you think, if you're thinking back now, because it's easy to look back and see kind of the history, was there like a defining moment where you decided, I'm going to build this helicopter, I'm going to build, HX50, or let's call it the first Hill product? Or was it this slow progression over time where your career was leading you one step to the next, and it took you down a path where eventually it was like, okay, this might be a viable option to try this? Or was there a defining moment where you said, my career, my life, my purpose will be in this direction to build a helicopter?
The best way that I can explain it, and it sounds corny, it's more like a calling. It's just something that's always been in me that I've always wanted to do. So it's not it's not an exaggeration when I say this is all I've wanted to do since I was a teenager. This is really all I've wanted to do since I was a teenager. So it wasn't so much as what was the turning point that led you to where we sit today. It was how do you start something like that? How do you do it? And so I always knew I wanted to do it, and then my whole life journey really has been about how you equip yourself to be able to deliver on it. So at first it was, okay, I need a mechanical engineering degree because helicopters are more machines than they are aircraft. And then once you know, right, we've got that, we can do that stuff now. How do you do all the difficult aerodynamics and flight dynamics? Right, I need a PhD in helicopter aerodynamics. So went off and did that. And then, right, okay, now I know roughly what I've got to do. How do you execute that? Right, I need an engineering company. Right, let's build one of them. And so I then set up my engineering company and built the infrastructure that was needed to incubate the design and the technology development, and then built the financial standing over a long period of time. You grow stuff organically, it takes forever, right? But I built that over a sort of 15-year period, and every bit of spare profit that we had was just turned back into funding bits of development, funding bits of work on getting the aircraft and then the engine to a level where eventually we were able to attract a little bit of government money and then accelerate the whole program to where we are today. But it's just been a consistent, determined, dogmatic focus since I was in the middle of my teenage years. But no, there's no exaggeration there. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And if you ask any of my family or you ask any of my closest friends, I think we've got some video clips of them somewhere, they will all tell you that I've been a horrible bore about helicopters since as long as they've known me, right? It's all I've ever wanted to do. And of course, the other thing that's gone on over that period is time goes by, right? It takes time to get educated. It takes time to build an engineering business. And then it takes time to develop something as complicated as this. And you've constantly got that voice in the back of your head saying, come on, get your finger out. If you don't get it done soon, it will be too late. And that was the echo that was in my mind through the years that I was running the engineering company, saying, come on, how can we accelerate this? How do we get the money to do it? How do we get the people to do it? How do we accelerate this process? But the fact is, when it's a job as big and complex as this, and you've got to do it all from scratch, it does just take a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So by trade, you're an engineer.
Yeah.
But by hobby, I would say you've been a helicopter pilot since your early 20s. Is that right?
Since I was 20.
20.
Yeah, since I was 20.
How do you think that's shaped how this project has been taken on? Because a lot of time people do these types of projects only being, one of the trades, one of the crafts. So having that as a background since you were that age, how do you think that's shaped the product itself?
I can say hand on heart that the worst thing you could possibly do is ask an engineer that's not a pilot to design a helicopter, right? Because I heard a really nice turn of phrase a while ago, which is the head of the cavalry needs to know how to ride a horse, right? And there's so much truth in that, because what you design comes about from solving the problems that need to be solved. And it's only somebody that really understands the people that buy helicopters, how those people use their helicopters, what they want from their helicopters, what they don't like about their helicopters, and the whole spectrum that goes around how they're used, how they're operated, and what people want and love and hate from. It's only by knowing that you can get to the start point of, right, what is it we're going to sit down and design? Because if you sat down and just did an analytical review of a helicopter from a technical perspective, you wouldn't end up in the same place as designing something that people want. You have to be able to start by understanding what people want. And what people want is often about solving some of the technical problems, but it's almost always dominated by the nuanced things that you only get to know by being immersed in that environment and being around those people
Yeah.
for a very long period of time. And so being being a frustrated young helicopter pilot that couldn't afford to do it, going through the early years of my business development and only being able to afford to fly a bit, and being frustrated with the practicalities of self-fly hire
Yeah.
and things like that, seeing the way that self-fly hire machines get knocked about quite often by the plethora of people that operate them, then looking at how the people that come and go through those sorts of flight schools, being the kind of sugar daddy that provides the helicopter and then leasing it back, looking at the psychology and the practicality of that, and then being somebody that can start to try and use a helicopter. When I was running my engineering business, I used to fly as often as I could everywhere to get the most out of my time, and seeing the practicalities and the realities of what you can and can't do with a helicopter when you're trying to weave it into your life. All of that stuff has been absolutely instrumental in shaping what we needed to deliver. Forget the technical stuff. The how you do it is the easy bit. We're all trained to do the how stuff. It's the what. What is it we've got to deliver to set this whole market alight again? And that's what the two and a half decades of experience of being a helicopter pilot, of being a self-fly hire guy, of being an owner operator have given me. That's why I know exactly what it is we need to deliver, and that's why what we've delivered is resonating so much with the whole GA scene. It's because I understood what it was they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the project finally took shape, in your mind, you sort of had a concept, okay, this is kind of what the helicopter is going to be. Can you describe for me what you wanted the pilot that was going to be sitting in the pilot seat of your helicopter for the first time, what you want them to feel?
I want them to feel like a movie star, right? I want them to wake up in the morning, open their curtains, see their helicopter on their back lawn, and be excited about wherever they're going to go. And then when they get in their helicopter, they've got to feel like the king of the universe, right? All that hard work that they put into life to get themselves into the position where they could afford to buy one of these things, they're rewarded for every day when they get into their aircraft, and when they fly along above the traffic wherever they're going, and the view and perspective on the world they get when they hear the turbine engine start for the first time every day, and the whiff of jet fuel that you get every time you fire one up. It's got to make you tingle with excitement and sort of give you a warm glow of satisfaction for having got to the point in your life where you can do that. I want them to feel like that. And then when people see these aircraft flying around, they have to turn heads, right? I want people to see one of these things coming into land and think, wow, what's that? You know, you want the young kids seeing you come into land and think, Dad, what's that? I want one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want the guys that haven't got one to think, who's he? and their wives to think, who's he? It's got to
Exactly.
have that kind of impact to
Yeah.
really get people excited about flying again, and then all the other things that you can do. So it's got to have that kind of emotive impact on people for it to really be a product. Yeah,
Right.
it's not a machine.
Yeah.
It's a product, and you've got to make people want it with that kind of design quality.
So most people, when they think of building a new helicopter, they want to improve on what's already there. So they look at what's there and they're trying to make improvements to that. You did the opposite. You started with a clean slate of paper. What was the guiding philosophy to make that decision to be able to create this aircraft basically from a clean sheet?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. We did start by we'd got a set of things that we needed to deliver, and you've got to remember by this point I was an engineer with 20 years of experience solving some of the most difficult problems out there from every difficult industry you can imagine. That was what the previous business did, and so I set about this with a really practical and pragmatic mindset, saying, let's just do this the easiest way that we can, right? So I started off wanting to buy an engine, wanting to buy a suite of avionics, wanting to just do a Gucci version of what was out there already with enough performance to be safe, in the hands of inexperienced private owner operators. And when you sit down and we initially mapped out a four-seater with a piston engine, and that didn't work. I couldn't get the performance I wanted, and I really struggled getting any kind of sense out of the engine manufacturers that we approached. It was just going nowhere. It was going nowhere commercially. I couldn't hit the price point I want. I couldn't hit the performance I want. With some of the engines that I was looking at, it was never going to be refined enough. I couldn't hit my own objectives doing it that way. So I'd done a lot of turbine work in the past, and I knew that it didn't need to cost what people were charging for turbine engines. But I also knew that if you set about trying to do a new turbine engine, that part of the project would be bigger than the whole helicopter project. And so I tried everything. I tried aeroizing big block American V8 engines. There's a wonderful group of engines that just predate the jet age, where people were looking at naturally aspirated compression ignition engines, because they can hold their performance up to about 18,000 feet because they run in an excess of air, unlike a piston engine. And so I looked at that, and then I looked at the existing turbine engines, and I just couldn't get any of it to work for performance and price. And so we ended up taking the bold decision to do the engine, which immediately doubles the complexity, well, more than doubles the complexity of the program. But the flip side of that then is I can say, right, now this helicopter can be anything that I want it to be, right? So at that point, we were able to start with, what is the mission? And the mission is 595 kilo passengers, their bags, and 3 hours of fuel, and fly at 140 knots. And you cannot do that with any engine that you can buy. And you cannot do that in a reasonable cost and price point if you try and make an old world aluminium and steel tube helicopter. So that then pushed us down to, okay, so if you want to fly fast, it's going to have to be sleek and cowled in. That means we've got to have a composite body. You've got to have a modern rotor system, because if you're going to fly that fast, you need to be able to handle the flight dynamics and the vibration. And then the engine gave us the power and the refinement. And then the only thing that was left then was the avionics. And hand on heart, I wanted to just buy avionics, right? I'd spec'd out a suite of avionics from one of the suppliers. And went to talk to them, and at first they said, yeah, we can do all that, it's great. And then it got pushed up the chain to the boss people, and they said, oh, no, you can't have that, you've got to have this, and it's going to cost you 50 to 100 grand a helicopter. We can't do that, and we don't need any of that IFR stuff either. You know, we just need a good VFR cockpit. So I ended up doing that myself as well. So a lot of that has just come out of commercial necessity to deliver what it is that you need to deliver if you want the aircraft to be successful commercially. And it's the market that sets the price. It's not me, it's the market that sets the price. If the price gets out of control, you can't sell them. If the operating cost gets out of control, people can't operate them, so you can't sell them. So you have to hit the performance, you have to hit the price, you have to hit the desirability. So I've been pushed into a corner of doing it all, and I would have never done it this way if there was an easier way with partners that I could trust to maintain price point and delivery. Then we would have done this in a fraction of the time and bought in a load of bits. But unfortunately, that's not what the GA supply chain looks like. That's not what the aviation market looks like anymore. So we've ended up having to do much more work and be much more disruptive. We never set out to do that.
Yeah. So the helicopter is not only beautiful, but it's totally functional in a different way than what we're used to. I would ask a question of, what would be the design element that you'd be most proud of in this helicopter?
I think the thing that will make the biggest difference is the quality of the aerodynamics. That's being able to get the drag down to the level that we have really closes the gap between helicopters and aeroplanes. So to have a machine that can carry 5 people and their bags and 3 hours of fuel, but then sit at 140 knots is game changing. And yes, of course, there are other helicopters that can sit at 140 knots. There are some helicopters that fly faster. but they use a lot more fuel and they're a lot more expensive, and they don't have everything else that we do. So we've designed a really efficient helicopter. So beneath that beauty is a really efficient and elegant aerodynamic design that allows us to deliver a level of performance that will be game changing for helicopters. So you're not now sat at 110 knots less your headwind, you're sat at 140 plus knots. And even a 10 or a 20 knot headwind on 140 knots still means you're traveling at 120 knots, which you can still really go places at 120 knots.
Yeah.
And all the benefits of point to point of a helicopter. So there's this helicopter as it sits there behind us has already turned out far better than I ever dreamed it would be. And that's largely down to the contributions of a lot of brilliant people that work here that bring skills far beyond my own. And so I believe this is at the level of what the finest automotive manufacturers are doing in terms of a piece of industrial design.
Yeah.
And so there's loads of elements that I'm proud of. I love the digital cockpit. I love the interior. I love the structural work that we're finalizing at the moment, because that's game changing again in what we've been able to do there.
Yeah.
The rotor system's amazing. But the thing that will make the biggest difference to our end users, and so us, is the fact that the aerodynamics unlocks a new world of performance for the helicopter, and being able to sit there smoothly at 140 knots will change everything for the industry.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really cool. I can't wait to be flying it at 140 knots. Last time I was flying, I was doing about 90 to 100 knots and thinking, wow, what would it feel like right now to be doing an extra 40, getting to where I want to go that much faster. So
yeah, make a big difference when you're trying to get places.
it really does.
If you're slinging loads or flying around in circles teaching people to fly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you use a helicopter like I've used one for the last 10 or 15 years, where it's all about getting somewhere and getting there quickly, then the speed makes all the difference.
Yeah.
It really does.
Now, building a helicopter company from scratch to what you've done here, including an engine, is pretty much an impossible task, near impossible task.
I can vouch for that.
Can you let me in on some of the challenges that you've faced over the last while in this project? I can promise you it hasn't all been rosy. So give me some of the bigger challenges, some of the smaller ones, the ones that stand out to you the most.
I think I've said this before, and the single most powerful and enabling thing, and the single biggest problem, is people, right? I think if you take GA as a microcosm, not a lot has happened really since the late 1970s. And so all of the people that were doing amazing things in the 60s and 70s have long since retired or worse. And nobody has really followed in their footsteps. So, we haven't designed any new turbine engines in this sector. We haven't designed any new aircraft with modern technology in this particular segment that we've entered. And so there really isn't a large number of people out there that have living memory of how to do this stuff. Mm-hmm. So we've had to build a team of people full of brilliant, intelligent people that bring lots of things from lots of industries, and then solve a lot of these problems essentially as if you're doing it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And that's been a really big challenge. And if you then factor that up to the scale of things that we have to do, we're not just the design authority, we also make all of these bits. So all of these lost arts of how you cast turbine blades, how you make gears, how you make bearings, how you make tools, how you make press tools, how you make tools for composite panels, how you make patterns, how you make rotor blades, all of these things that have been, the knowledge has been scattered to a very distributed supply chain and then protected so nobody gets to know how to do it. We've had to bring all of that together under one roof and do that with people that really are trading on their intellect and capability as raw engineers rather than necessarily people that have done all of these things a million times before, because they don't exist anymore. Yeah, certainly not in a format where you can access them. So that's been profoundly difficult. The actual engineering side of designing a helicopter and an engine is, with the right people in place, it's just a big job. It's all been done before. There's lots of examples out there of what's worked and what hasn't. And so you've got a great amount of background knowledge to guide you towards the right path. And then you do the engineering to solve the problems. There's lots of practical things that are difficult about scaling as quickly as we have. And that is you're constantly outgrowing stuff, right? So in terms of facilities, you really want to nail all of your facilities and your overheads and things down to an absolute minimum. But every time you add another process, or every time you add another thing that you've got to do, you need more space and more machines, and then you need more people to do that. But you can't keep any of them busy because you're not in production yet. Mm-hmm. So scaling the infrastructure to be able to do what a whole supply chain does is an enormous task, and it's a really difficult commercial task, mm-hmm. because you've got to do it almost at pilot scale, enough to be able to prove out what you're doing and build your prototypes, but not invest in the people or the plant or the overall space that you need to be able to do it. And even doing it that way, you still end up with a massive facility like this, that somebody has to design, somebody has to maintain, then you have to staff it, then you have to operate it, and everything that goes with it. So the constant outgrowing of facilities has been very disruptive throughout the whole program, and it's a sign of success, right? It's a sign of we're making progress, but all of these things have to be dreamt up. Somebody has to design them and then build them and project manage them and operate them, and that all consumes time and effort. So I think the way that you constantly outgrow things is a big challenge. I think the people problem is and will remain forever, and it is across the whole industry the biggest challenge that you've got to get over. Another interesting challenge, which has been a wonderful lesson in psychology and lesson in life, and again it's related to people, it's the stepping into an industry where nothing has happened for 40 years. Everybody believes that what's happening at the moment is the way it has to be because it's been like that for 40 years. And so learning how to communicate and explain that, no, hang on, you don't accept this in any other area of your life. Why are you accepting it here? And breaking down all of the myths and all of the things. Oh, it's just down to the cost of certification. No, it's not. No, it's not. And it's just because of this, and it's just because none of that's true, right? Yeah. And we've existed in a market where the people that used to dominate it stepped away from it because of product liability costs, and nothing's happened. Yeah. And then the sort of dwindling demand with all of the existing overheads of a big aerospace company have just driven prices up. And with no competition to speak of, no real competition to drive that back the other way, it's just been allowed to meander on without any natural predators, without any natural controls. And so helping people to understand that and getting people to buy into that, to support us at the level, at the scale that you need to be able to make this happen has been challenging, as you well know. And we've spent a lot of time and effort trying to get that message across and just keep feeding that with evidence on look, well, here they've done it, here's another bit that they've done, you thought this was impossible until they did it yesterday. And just keep feeding that stuff out. I think those are probably the three biggest things. Everything we're doing is technically very difficult, and that demands a very high level of capability. Yeah. And the other thing that anybody that's ever run a business will recognize as well is getting all the children to play nicely is very hard work, right? Getting everybody, you end up putting together a team of amazing people in their own rights, but you end up with a team of centre forwards, right? Everybody thinks they're the most important, and often these people just don't get on, and you've got to do a lot of work and control to try and keep those people working together effectively enough to get the job over the line. And again, there's no alternative to that because the employment market is so distressed at the moment. Yeah. So I'd say those are the main things. I've probably missed some, but those are the main things that spring to mind.
That's good. I mean, it dovetails right into my next question would be, there's people out there for sure that say this is impossible and it's never going to happen. He's not going to be able to get it done. What do you think it is that they're not understanding about what you have accomplished or what you're doing, that that they have a misunderstanding of or misconception of?
I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the aerospace supply chain for sure. Oh, this is really difficult. I wouldn't do this. You best leave this to us. And then in a big company where they believe it takes 30 people and 5 weeks to make a cup of coffee, those kind of things can run. Those attitudes are accepted, and you can't do that in GA. GA is never going to support huge teams with huge budgets. You've got to be able to do things cost effectively, which requires people of a very different level. It requires people that can work down to first principles and design stuff from the ground up, and they're really hard to find, by the way, but those people can do amazing things. And I think when you get down to it, when you start making silly things, I mean, who makes bearings, right? That's a ridiculous situation to find ourselves in. But when you get down to making bearings, sure, the tolerances are really tight and the geometry has to be really carefully controlled and the materials are really important, and there's some magic numbers for contact stresses and things like that, and harmonics that you have to manage really carefully. But once you know that, it's just another piece of engineering. And it's the same with gears, and it turns out it's the same with composites and composite rotor blades, and the same with elastomeric components. None of them are as complicated as people think. It's just the fact that people have been in companies where that stuff is just subbed out, right? That stuff's just, so they've never had any experience themselves of saying, well, actually, how do you design that? And when you go to these companies in the supply chain, they've all got the same handbooks and textbooks that you can buy from anywhere else. Everybody's working with the same set of physics. And so I think they just, it's just, it is believed to be that way because people have never known any different. And engineering as a profession is incredibly risk averse, right? The kind of, the reality of what an engineer does is he'll draw a picture of something on a piece of paper and then spend the next week thinking of all the reasons why it's going to fail, right? And then trying to engineer those problems out one by one. So very often the majority of people that work in this level of engineering are glass half empty people. They're constantly looking for reasons why things will fail. Now imagine a large corporation full of people like that, right?
Yeah.
All they're going to want to do is risk manage all of the risks out of it, so that nothing they ever do is going to fail, and nothing that they ever make is going to fail at not fail in service, fail a test, fail on the development bench, right? Where in reality, all you've done is you've handed over that problem to somebody else that's still got to solve that problem, right? And you're now going to pay them for the privilege of it, right? And so it really is just a case of that's the way it's been in the industry forever. Most people have spent their entire career in an environment where that's the only way it's done, and the managers are kind of powerless to do anything about it because they're not engineers. You know, they can't see, or they're not good enough engineers to see through that. And you've got to try and motivate this body of people that you can't replace to do it a completely different way that they don't believe in. And so what we've done is, because I know that's not the case, because that was what I spent 15 years doing before we built this company, is going in and solving those problems when people were stuck. And I bring that knowledge from all sorts of industries beyond aerospace as well. And so I know what it takes to design things that work. I know how to design things from first principles. I've spent 15 years doing that successfully. That's allowed me to build this, okay? And it is a vast job, right? So the one thing that you can't underplay is how enormous this task is. It is absolutely huge, right? It would have been huge if it was just industrialized the entire supply chain for a helicopter. And a helicopter is just a box with a couple of gearboxes and a propeller on the top, right? But a gas turbine engine is another level again, and then the avionics. Now, a lot of the avionics we do still buy in and just put our front end on it. But it is definitely a vast task, and people are right to look at that and say, he's really got his work cut out. Evidently we have. You've been following what we've been doing for the last 5 years. But it is just work. And what we've done is we rely very heavily on a small number of utterly brilliant engineers, different level to what you'll find in all the big companies, a totally different level. And those are the people that can make the magic happen. A small number of those will do what 100 engineers couldn't do. And that's the secret.
So how do you push through when you have all this skepticism from your point of view, how do you push through that? And when you get to major technical hurdles, things like that, what's your, do you have a process that you have developed over the last 25 years to push through those things?
What I try and do, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but what I try and do is just keep, I own the big picture. I own the big plan. That's my problem. And I try and keep each of the specialists focused on what we've got to do over the next day or over the next few days. And don't worry about the rest. That's my problem. That's the thing that I've found works the best to date. And this is a guy that worked on his own for a very long time, right? So I don't consider myself to be much of a people manager, but that's worked pretty well. That's worked pretty well. In terms of my in my own mindset and the sort of general negativity around what we've done, then I kind of ignore it. Because I don't read any of the, I'm not on any social media personally, and I don't read any of the comments or the stuff that goes on, because it's just toxic, and very often it's people that are just not qualified to have an opinion. And so I tend to ignore that stuff, and I draw a lot of solace in the fact that over 1,400 people have bought my helicopter before we've even flown it. And that's because they believe in me, they believe in my team, they believe in the products that we're creating. And these aren't people that we've pulled the wool over their eyes. These are some of the most astute, successful, and worldly wise business people you will ever meet. These people have the skills, the knowledge, and the wherewithal to turn me inside out, and they've bought into it. And they've made real world judgments about where we are in development, how long they think it's going to take, where we are financially, our ability to deliver, our ability to get it approved, and then to scale up into production. And they've still supported us. So that tells you two things. It tells you what the people that really know about this stuff think of us, and they see it all because we put everything out on the app. We put everything out because we've got nothing to hide. We invite everybody to the factory, and we had a really lovely factory tour a couple of months where our 100 Club, as we call them, the first 100 customers were invited to a dinner that we put on, and to see PC1 in the flesh for the first time. Now, these guys have had so much PC1 stuff pumped at them through the app that you'd expect them to be bored to tears by it by now. But they were totally overwhelmed by the sheer scale and sophistication and the capability and the overall endeavor that's been executed here. And while they were here, we cast components for them in the casting lab. We did all this stuff live so they could see, look, it's there, they're doing it. And for those sorts of people to be blown away by it, then that gives me a huge degree of confidence that we're on the right track and it'll be all right. The other thing I would say is that I've spent my life solving real problems, right? Problems that involve physics. And physics doesn't compromise, but it also doesn't fight back. And so if you understand what you're doing and you do the right things, it'll work. And then it's just a question of time, right? It's how long it takes you to iterate to the point that you've made all this stuff work. And that's the reality of the situation that we're in at the moment. I'm an experienced and PhD qualified helicopter expert and engineer, right? I know exactly what we've got to do to get this over the line. And what I've got to do is work to the bottom of my jobs list and solve all of the problems, and then it'll work. And then I've got over 1,400 customers waiting for me. And there is nothing that any of the naysayers can say or do that is going to change those material facts. When I've got all the physics to work, it'll work. And then I've got a ready-made customer base that want to buy these things. So that's how I cope with it personally. And then the other thing I would just overlay on top of that is, I'm quite happy in my own skin. I love coming to work. I love what I do. I still feel like I'm living somebody else's life, right? This feels like it's like an out-of-body experience most of the time, because who gets to live their dreams, right? Who gets to live the thing that they thought that they were put on this earth to do? Very few people get that opportunity. So I see this as an opportunity, not a burden. And I also, having been in the helicopter industry for 25 years, I understand the context that these people, you look through life through your own lens, and you might have commercial pilots, for example, that are sort of 60 years old now and are still flying exactly the same jet ranger that they were when they got their first job on day one after qualifying. The same machine, not even the same type of machine, the same one. Right? And you've got people where nothing has ever happened, right? Nothing has ever happened.
Yeah.
Stuff's just got more expensive and more difficult, and the machines have got older and tireder. And that's the lens that they look through at the helicopter industry. And obviously in the GA space, lots of people have come and gone over the years as well. And so I've seen lots of people try and fail. And so I totally get it. It's totally normal for people with that experience of life.
Yeah.
To think, nah, it'll never happen. It's a flash in the pan. It's a Ponzi scheme. All the things that we've heard, but those people aren't career engineers. Those people aren't PhD qualified helicopter specialists, and those people haven't built what I've built. And so they're welcome to their opinions. I understand them. They don't have any material impact on what we have to do here. What we have to do here is finish the job and then look after our customers and get these machines into service as fast as we can.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. 20 years in the industry, flying a lot of different helicopters, and exactly what you said rings true. It's you're still flying the same machines that have been around since the 60s, 70s, and not a lot has changed, like you say. Yeah.
And these are great time-proven machines, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Who doesn't love a Jet Ranger, right? They're great. They're great machines, and they were incredible pieces of engineering. Both Jet Ranger and the MD500, totally brilliant pieces of engineering.
Yeah.
And I will also say, and I don't say this very often, the two-bladed rotor system has got a lot of things that are really clever about it that most people don't understand.
Okay.
Really, really clever. The guys that developed that were really, really clever.
There you go. From a personal point of view, can you think back to a specific moment that you were the most proud of this project?
I think there are two standout moments, and there are three standout moments actually. There are three standout moments that are memories that will live with me forever. The first one is when we'd finally got HX50 looking like this. The very next thing that we had to do was take it into the wind tunnel, and so we built a 1/6 scale wind tunnel model. And got that ready for wind tunnel testing. And it was when I was still working out of essentially a 4-man office in a little rented office in Rugeley. And the model was on the meeting table that we used to have in the middle of the room. And Izzy brought the 3 kids down for lunch. When they were on holiday, she used to bring them for lunch so I could see them during the day. And they came in and they saw this model and they were totally blown away by it. And I can just remember them seeing what I'd done for the first time and it meaning something to them. And that was an amazing moment. That was just like I say, that'll be a moment that will live with me forever. And I think there's a picture of me holding it like a newborn child. And it felt just like that. It was like meeting your baby for the first time. That was a really important moment. The other big one, the other massive one obviously was at Duxford when we revealed the machines for the first time. Because people had seen renders of it for a long time. But renders only get you so far, and there's lots of skepticism about how well we were going to be able to cowl the rotor system in and what the interior would really look like and all these little bits and pieces. And the first time we were able to put that on the show floor, and it was the first time I was able to prove to myself that a product in this segment could have that kind of emotional impact. And the little ditty that we did with animating the lights on the helicopter purely to test that theory, can you make people feel that emotional? And we got half the customer base in tears in the audience. It was an amazing moment. And so that was magical. And the feedback that we had for the hour or so after that, and even the feeling and the mood in the bar, because everybody was staying at the same hotel for that, or everybody was in the same bar in the hotel after, and they were just on cloud 9, and it makes everything else worth it. All the the stuff that you have to do to make that happen. And it had been a horrific period trying to get those 2 helicopters there for that show, for that deadline. That was, I could write a book about just that 3-month period, right? But that curtain drop, and it was amazing. I loved that. But in terms of that was a very emotional moment. But I think the period where you first realize just how far you've come, it's like walking up a big mountain and looking back and, whoa, quite high. It was not long after we'd moved here. And again, we scarcely built any of this stuff. It was literally just the few big things like the mezzanine and the machine shop and the big gantry mill in the corner. And Craig, one of our most senior engineer, came walking into the factory, and the staff had turned up, and it was like kids on Christmas morning, like they're just seeing this place for the first time and thinking, oh, look at this. And I was walking down here to show Craig the gantry mill because he hadn't seen it before, and it's that gantry mill that caused all of this because we've got nowhere to put it. And he says, do you ever stop and think what you've done? And I don't think about it like that, because there's always another problem tomorrow. There's always another thing to solve tomorrow. But him saying that to me, and then the first few days coming up the slopey drive up to the gates to get into this place, and seeing the scale of where we've got to, those are probably the moments. I can remember I went to meet Frank Robinson when I was learning to fly helicopters in Long Beach. I flew over to Torrance, and they kindly gave me a factory tour. And you can imagine a 20-year-old kid. I've got a picture of me actually surrounded by 1 million helicopters in their delivery delivery center. I said shed because Westland used to call it the flight shed, in their delivery area. And it was just the most amazing experience of my life. But I came away thinking, how on earth does anybody build this from nothing? Where on earth do you start with something like that?
Yeah.
And so that was the first little tentative step of ours along that road. And it was when we first moved here. And everybody that comes here now, all of these really qualified people in the customer base that have got huge factories and got huge businesses and have bought and done everything, they come here and think, oh, wow. And you think, yeah, little by little, yeah, we're getting there, little by little.
Yeah, exactly, big steps. So was there ever a time where you can think of that you thought, you know what, I don't think this is going to actually work. I don't think we're actually going to make it through this?
There was a time when I didn't know how we were going to get it started, because I thought I'd exhausted every avenue. You know, I'd been trying to get a program like this funded since my very early 20s. I'd got investors coming to see me at Cranfield when I was doing my PhD. And so we'd looked at every imaginable way that you could think of to fund a program like this. But you got exactly the same response that you get from many of the naysayers now. That's mad. He'll never be able to do it. It's too big a job. And imagine trying to sell that to a middle-aged investor when you're a 20-year-old kid that's never done anything. Yeah, I spent ages looking at different ways that we could do that, and eventually honed in on the idea I was going to have to build an engineering business to incubate it myself and take the risk out of it and use all my own money to do it. And so there was a long period, 15 years of my life, I fought that reality of how do you get this thing started. It's like the most stubborn car in the world to get started. But since we found the magic formula, since we realized how to harness the market and the unsatiated pent-up need and demand, there's never been a single moment when I've thought I'll fail. Not once, not ever. And you've got to understand, I have horrifically hard days every other day. And it's often people things, right? People that you depend on greatly for particular areas of the program will do something that can not intentionally, but will do things that can really jeopardize you. Or this is not a game for kids, right? This is really difficult, and the people that work here, we expect and need an awful lot for them, and so we sometimes reach the end of people's tolerance for that, and you can lose people that were really hard to find and are going to be really hard to replace. And so those sorts of things will trip you up, and those sorts of things will take the wind out of your sails for a few days. But the skill in all of this is how you become resilient to that, and you regroup. And if you can't do it the same way as you did it before because that resource isn't available anymore, you pivot and you do it a different way. But it doesn't change where you're aiming. So the analogy I use when I'm talking to people about this is, imagine yourself coming out of a packed football game of a winter's evening, and you pile out of the stadium with 100,000 other people, and you've got to get from the gate to the train station over there, and all you've got to do is walk from here to there. You can clearly see where you've got to go. You know that all you've got to do is move your legs one after the other for a while, and you'll get there. But then you get hit by this wave of people bouncing you from one side to the other, and you take a left, you take a right, you go a meandering route, and you get knocked off course all the time, but you just keep moving towards it and you get there. And that's really what this sort of thing's like. You can't predict up front everything that you're going to have to cope with. And there are days when things hit you that are really hard to deal with and are really hard to cope with. And there's you're constantly managing this huge amount of uncertainty and the huge plethora of things that you've got to do. But fundamentally, all we've got to do is walk from here to there. And when we get there, we're done. Yeah, and that's really what it's like. So no, I've never ever doubted that we'll get this finished. I've never once had a sleepless night thinking, oh my God, I've taken on too much, we're not going to be able to do it. It's never felt like that. Do I have nights when sometimes I can't sleep because I've got things whirring around in my head? Of course I do. Do I have nights when I wake up thinking about work or thinking about people or thinking about the next thing I've got to do? Of course I do. But that's because I work 12 hours a day and my head's still spinning at 100 miles an hour when I get home. Yeah. And so it's really difficult what we do here, obviously, but there's never been a doubt, not a single solitary minute when I've doubted that we can't deliver this. It's just a question of time. It's just a question of how long it takes us with the resources that are available to us to get to the finish line. That's it. It'll get done, and it will be the best 5-seat helicopter that has ever been designed.
Have you guys heard about the Hill Helicopters presentation? Ruben and I do them every single day. You should book one right now. We tell you everything you need to know about the helicopter and how to pre-order it at a very special pricing. What you've done here is obviously incredible. The facility is amazing, the team's amazing. Can you paint a little picture for us of a day-to-day basis of what goes on behind us and actually upstairs as well, because there's a design room upstairs. What does it look like if you're to paint a picture of what actually happens here?
So in the design office, there's design never stops, right? So even though we've got the machines stood here, we've still got a lot of design work to do on some of the subsystems that were later slated as being later for development, and then the optional equipment, and then the design team become very, very, very involved in the approvals effort. And so if I take what goes on day to day at the moment, a lot of the effort is focused on some of the key systems of the engine that are next in line to be built. So where the environment up there is very calm, it's very studious, it's a very quiet place. It's a room full of very high performance computers, very sophisticated equipment, and a bunch of people of all ages. Actually, we've got some very young people and we've got some very experienced people. And just collaboratively working through the problems one by one. It's a big open plan office. We don't build ivory towers. It's a very flat structure. So all of the specialists sit in sort of functionally grouped areas. So we've got structures and composites sitting together. We've got the engine team sitting together next to the transmission and drivetrain team. And then we've got avionics, which I've got space up there, but they've also got their avionics lab down at the other side of the factory. And then I sit sit in a little glass box in the corner and float in and out of the office all day, every day, sort of supporting decision making and just chasing the critical activities through the office all day, every day. So we do everything. We do everything from sort of Henry's creative work to style the next products and the remaining features of like the interior and the trim and some of the options and things like that, through to the people that do the most sophisticated computational analysis on all areas of physics: aerodynamics, fluid flows, fuel sprays, combustion, structures, structural dynamics, vibrations, heat transfer, acoustics, multidisciplinary flight mechanics and control. All that stuff goes on up there. And then we've got guys that chase through the tiniest little details of design. So before speaking to you this afternoon, I've been in a meeting chasing through 27 critical clearances in the engines, right? So this is just as the engine grows and warms up at different levels, and all the materials have got different thermal expansion coefficients, managing how these bits open and close together so that when it's at its operating point, it's set up just in the way that the analysis assumed when we did it, to make sure we hit the performance point. And we have to work at that level. When people look at the helicopter, or when they look at the engine, they look at the finished product as a product or as a piece of sculpture or whatever. But you've got to think, every single thing that you see there, every little tiny detail of it has been designed by somebody, analysed by somebody, and every detail about that in terms of how it's designed, how every aspect of its physics work, how it's manufactured, all the surface coatings, the tolerances, its routings through the factory when we build it, how you quality control it and inspect it, all of that has to be designed for every component in the helicopter. So it takes an extremely dedicated team of very, very competent, experienced, intelligent people to pull that together. And a lot of that work, it isn't as sexy as floating around down by the helicopters here. It's quite dry, quite demanding academic work that needs to be done. And that's really what goes on predominantly upstairs at the moment. And then down on the shop floor here, this is where the exciting stuff's happening now at the moment, where we're building a lot of these flight components and bench test components for the first time. So the shop floor is laid out on a functional basis. So we're in a kind of showroomy area here where we showcase the first two of the helicopters. Directly behind you, you've got the bay build area. Now in production, it will be a line build, much more like a car production facility, but for the early machines that we're doing for development, they'll be bay built. So it's more like building a house. You bring all the stuff to the site and then bolt it all together. And then beyond that, you've got each of the functional areas that represent each of the things that we do here. So we've got the casting shop, where we take in raw billet material and cast turbine blades, nozzle guide vanes, wheels, brake discs, engine casings, gearbox casings. Everything that you can imagine is done in that facility over there. Directly behind that is the pattern making facility, where we make all of the large scale patterns from which we take the carbon molds, from which we then make the molded panels that make the fuselage, the blades and all the cowls and the seats and all that sort of stuff. Beyond that is the gantry mill, where we machine all of the large scale components of the patterns and molds. Then we have the machine shop, where you see that in a lot of the videos. All of the precision manufacturing and measurement facilities are in there. All of the infrastructure to control and serialize everything that we produce and track it is all in there. And then above that, we've got a mechanical assembly area, we've got a trim area where we make all the components for interior trim, a non-destructive testing area, the avionics lab, and then the glazing facility where we make all of the glazing moldings and then the interior moldings that go around the structural elements to dress it for the finished state. And then back down on the shop floor down here, we've got the laminating facility, which you've seen today, where we take raw carbon fiber in, it gets CNC kit cut, dropped into piles of plies, and then they get loaded into the tools under computer control through the laser placement techniques. And then we've got the composite curing facility where all of those parts then get cured into solid components, the paint and preparation facility next to it. And then on this back wall just over here is where all the test rigs go. So you'll have seen some of the high-speed test rigs that we've got for the engine's drivetrain, for the starter generator, and various other bits and pieces there. And we're just about to start building the landing gear test rigs and then the structural test rigs for the blade and the fuselage on this back section of the floor here. So everything that you need to do to design, test, and manufacture a whole helicopter is under this one roof.
Awesome. Based on what you just said, people have actually seen this before because we showcase it on a regular basis on social media, etc.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that you can think of? I'm sure there's plenty, but one thing that you can think of that would actually surprise people about how you build HX50? Something that we maybe haven't shown or that's quite unique?
I think because when you're putting videos together, you have to try and be concise. I'm sure lots of people would say we're not very concise, but you have to try and be concise and get the message across quickly. When people come and tour the facility and they see what we do here firsthand, you get an immediate appreciation of the complexity of it, the level of detail, how much stuff you need to do this stuff, how many different processes there are to do things that you just totally take for granted, and the level of technology and expertise that we've got in terms of the people, the staff, the equipment, and the support infrastructure that we have around us. I think people, and by people I mean really experienced business people, I mean really experienced people from the engineering industry that come here. We think a lot about our own social media, but if you look at the manufacturing industry social media, if you look at how all of our suppliers, the people that supply our machine tools, our tooling, a lot of our equipment, they showcase us as what we're doing is incredible because we're at that level. So I think when people come here, the thing that what they get from it is an immediate appreciation of just how far we've come, just how much we've done. You know, it's easy to look in from the outside and think, well, there's no helicopter yet, so they've done nothing. But you've got to remember, we had to make the machine that makes the machine, right? Before you could make the machine. And when you come here, you understand just how much just how much has been done to do that, just how much power that gives us to get through development, to get through testing, and then to industrialize and scale up. Because we've already done it. It's here. It exists. We've just got to do more of it. Yeah. And I think come in here, you'll see that, and you can't get that from the videos.
So to flesh that out a little bit more, how important is it for you, for Hill, to control the entire process from the design room to building the engine to the production line, the entire process? How important is it to the final product that you're going to deliver?
It's absolutely critical on every level. So from the first instance, you could not have designed that helicopter to hit the performance or the price point if we didn't make it ourselves. So you can't buy the component. If we were to go and buy components to make something that's like that, you can't buy the components for what we're selling it for, right? So you can't get anywhere near the price point. You've got to cut all of those middlemen out of it. They don't add any value. They don't give you what you want, and they charge too much for it. So you've got to cut them out of it. So it's really, really crucial just to hit the price point and the performance that you do it yourself. But it's much more than that. Anybody that's been around aviation and operates helicopters today will know that a lot of manufacturers are struggling to get what they need. They're struggling to get parts for all systems in the aircraft. They're struggling even to get engines, right? The wait time for engines at the moment is outrageous, So they can't even support their existing customer base using this broken supply chain. And so beyond getting the aircraft into service, when you've got a fleet of these operating and your customers say, I've had a mishap, I've overtemped it, I need a new disc, I need some new turbine blades. You can't say to that person, no problem, sir, we'll have those to you right away in the next 12 months or so. right? Because that's an aircraft on the ground. That business isn't making any money. They can't function like that. The clock's ticking on the calendar overhaul. It just doesn't work on any level. And then when it comes to insurance, because of that whole battery of cost that you've got to insure against, everybody's paying stupid premiums for insurance because the insurance company have to cover all that cost. So although it's a massive undertaking to develop all of this out, what it means is we can get a product to market at a price that the market can thrive on, right? That's the first thing. And now we can recreate general aviation again. The next thing that you've got to do is make sure that the operators can operate that product at a price that their market can tolerate. So it's the hourly operating costs that define the size of the market. So you've got to get your you've got to get your total operating cost down to a level that gives GA a market size, a market reach that will make it healthy again. And the only way you can do that is by controlling the things that drive cost. So the three main things that drive cost for a helicopter are, first of all, the depreciation, the cost of the machine and the depreciation. 5,000 hours on condition across the platform. So we've dealt with that. And then the next thing is the cost of your insurance. So the insurance is always a big bill. Well, we've dealt with that because with the Hill insurance program, because I only have to insure what it costs me to replace one of those, not only do we cut out all the middlemen that we didn't use anyway, but I also cut myself out because I don't need to insure my margin. It's a very small percentage of these machines that are going to get damaged or knocked about to the extent that we have to replace them. The parts are inexpensive to me anyway. And so I essentially artificially lower the hull value. And then because I've got the whole fleet, I can take a view across the fleet as well. So that brings down the insurance cost to a level that's totally unparalleled. It's totally game changing. And then beyond that as well, because I make all the parts, I can control the cost of the parts. So as these machines drop off warranty, we'll be providing a very comprehensive insurance program that when you're on our insurance program, it also covers all of your parts as well. So any parts that come up for overhaul or any parts that come up for unscheduled replacement are covered anyway. So that then means that we've got a machine that was inexpensive to buy and so finances really well, and you've got a machine that is the lowest it can possibly be to operate in terms of its operating in costs, that totally open up the volume to our volume of the market to our customers. And you really can't do that if you've got the whole supply chain telling you what this thing's going to cost. They don't care what the market will tolerate. I would love to repeat some of the conversations I've had over the years with various members of the supply chain, but it would just infuriate these people further. Right. But there's no way that you can do that. So we get to deliver an aircraft at a price point that will allow it to sell. We can maintain a direct operating cost that will allow our operators to thrive and to grow their own businesses and hence come back and buy more helicopters from us. And you can only do that if you've got that level of control. That's what's special about the approach. Yes, it's really difficult to do. Yes, it's a massive job, but it changes everything.
Right.
And nobody will ever go back.
No, that's true.
Nobody will ever go back.
They can't at this stage, yeah. You've obviously built an incredibly passionate community, ownership group. What's that been like for you personally?
You know, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, how do you cope with the pressure? You've got 1,400 and however many of these to deliver now. How do you cope with the pressure of all of that pent-up demand, waiting for the machine? And the reality is, because these people were all broadly more experienced, more successful businessmen businesswomen than me, you're forced to be as naked as the day you were born in front of them. You just have to tell the truth about everything. And that's been one of the most empowering experiences of my life, because they know everything. There's no secrets, there's no surprises, they're fully informed. Then what you've essentially got there is a body of people that was so frustrated by the way the industry was that they were prepared to give a guy that hadn't got the facilities to do it and had never done it before a chance of a lifetime to deliver this for them, to make their dreams come true. And so what we've got in that body of people is all of that business experience, all of that commercial experience. They're like a bunch of business mommy and daddies, right? These people are there to nurture and support us to the best of their own experience, and to cheer us on from the sideline. And I'll talk again briefly about the 100 Club event that we had recently, where we pulled a group of these people together. We had a fly-in at a lovely stately home here in Staffordshire, and the party went on until 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, and these people are just so full of energy for what we're doing. You don't need to be frightened of them. You need to harness the power that they have to offer, and you can only do that if you're giving people what they want. You know, if you're not delivering the product they want, if you're not bringing about a longed for change in an industry that they're really passionate about, you don't get that opportunity. But these people, they're not customers, they're co-founders, they're the pioneers that had the courage and the will to support us in doing what was at the outset an incredibly difficult task, and it's only been possible because of them. So the community, from the point of view of what it's done for the business, has been the sole reason for its success. It's been it was my last resort, was to try and do it this way, and it turned out to be the one that it's far more than a way to get this off the ground. It's actually the reason that product's as good as it is. And the interaction with them has opened my eyes to so many ways that we can make the offering better and do better for general aviation. So it's been absolutely incredible. And of course, we're only just getting started with it, because with a fleet and a community, a fleet of the best aircraft in the world, and a community of the most enthusiastic and motivated people for GA in the world, think of what we can do in terms of the experience and the lifestyle of being a next generation general aviation pilot.
Yeah.
You know, you could be anywhere in the world and you can pick up our app and find somebody that's either got a HX50 or is waiting for one. Yeah, and have access to all the best things that territory can offer for helicopters. It's a sort of network of incredibly like-minded people everywhere that spawns all of its own opportunities, and bringing that group of people together behind a common goal will totally unlock what it is to be a helicopter owner, what it is to be a member of the next chapter of general aviation, wherever you are in the world. And we're only just getting started on that.
Yeah. Can you explain what the experience is for a new HX50 owner from the time that they order the helicopter to delivery? So let's assume somebody just gave you their money for a deposit, said, here you go, Jace, here's 30,000 for an HX50 or 50,000 for an HC50. What is their journey going to be like between that moment and getting delivery of their first helicopter?
Okay, so the first thing that happens is they get introduced into the broader Hill social community. So our closed environment of all of the community of the existing owners. So they're welcomed onto the app, and then what we provide as we go through the development is regular updates on progress. So they get the inside track of what's going on at the factory. We provide updates on, and even sometimes it's as simple as little snippets of things that we've done. Oh, look, this is the first one. Here's the first few laminates going down into the first blade. Here's the first drop test. And all of these firsts get pumped out over the app into the Hill community before they get broadcast broader to the market. So these guys really have an inside track to what we're doing. They also have direct lines of communication to all of the key people here at Hill. So all of the people that they know and recognize from what we do, myself, Mark, Eric, Pete, you guys, all the people that are instrumental in what happens here are on the app, and they can reach us at any time, and they'll get a really prompt response from any of us. So as we put these updates, or as questions are posed by the customer base, they'll get a response from the person that's at the top of that part of the company, and so You're never alone. And then obviously the community itself is thriving. All of the existing customers that are excitedly enjoying their existing helicopter and the journey will interact on the app as well. And then that's what's happening at the moment. Then as we start to get closer, more and more functionality will be rolled out on the app. So the insurance portal will be offered through the app. The maintenance portal will be offered through the app. We'll start to offer all of the bookings for your type rating, so you can come and get qualified on the early prototype machines once they've got their permit and they're approved, so that you're ready to fly your own aircraft. And then what will happen is you'll be scheduled for your booking, for your build slot, and then you'll come to the factory for a couple of weeks to if it's a HX50, to build your HX50 and be part of that build process. So you'll come, you'll get your build experience and then your flight training, and your mechanic will come, not necessarily at the same time, and be trained on the maintenance program. So all of that is delivered through the Hill community. And then on top of that, we obviously have, when we hit major milestones, we have key events as well, where we bring the whole community together to celebrate these major hurdles being overcome and the next chapter, the next stage, and the next milestone getting going. So all of that's delivered through the app. Now, the intention is obviously to be really frequent with these updates, and we go through periods where, particularly when over the recent history, it's been me that's largely been producing a lot of the content. The last couple of months have been really intensive on me in terms of engineering, and so that's fitted out a little bit. That's not something that will stay that way. We're working hard in the background to keep pumping out information to keep everybody fed, but it's a balance as well.
Yeah. There's such a huge energy from the ownership group that's out there right now that's part of this project, wanting to be part of history being made right here in general aviation. What would you say to those people that are watching the project from the sidelines and still haven't made that commitment because they're waiting for a milestone? They're waiting for a particular thing. They aren't sure, is the engine going to work? Are the flight tests going to happen? Can they actually make production? Can they produce the helicopter at scale? What would you say to those people that are waiting on the sidelines to see what's going to happen with the project?
Yeah, so from my point of view, hand on heart, nothing can stop this now. It's of a size and a scale that other than me going under a bus, there is nothing that can stop this happening now. It's just a question of time. So for those people, everybody needs to come to the project at a point that they feel comfortable, right? What I don't need is a bunch of nervous people that every time a milestone slips because we've hit a real world problem that we've got to overcome before that bit's safe to move on, that they're going to be on the phones all agitated and upset. It's a development program. It's a fluid situation. So people can only come when they're ready. And that's fine. And we've always been respectful of that and happy with that. I think the point I would make is that we've been really, really, really successful to date. You know, put sales and marketing aside for 1 second. Just look at what we've delivered. You know, everybody said it was bonkers to try and vertically integrate the whole supply chain of a helicopter. Well, here it is, organically funded, done by me and my team. It's here. We can make everything we need to make to build that helicopter under this factory that is ours, right? There's no external investors. There's no looming demons after a quick return and exit. This is all about delivering for our customers. And everybody said that it was bonkers to try and do an engine. But just a few months ago, we got 50% of the engine on the bench, and the rest of it is being produced right now. And it won't work perfectly first time. These things never do. Don't expect that, but it'll work. And it will work perfectly by the time we're finished developing it. And that engine is, in its own right, is a £450,000 delta on the price of the helicopter. Just that. They said it couldn't be done. It'll be done in a few months, right? And so there is no doubt that these things will happen. The variable is how long it takes me to get them all over the line. And that's just a question of how many things we find along the way, but we'll sort it. Now, the flip side to all of that is you guys have also been really successful. And so we're sat here now with over 1,400 orders. You've given the presentation to 10,000 people. and we've got about 5,000 serious prospects within that 10,000. So I can't see at the moment a set of scenarios where I would anticipate raising the base production volume above about 1,000 units a year, because I don't think the long-term demand, I'd need evidence to see that the long-term demand can sustain that for a single product. And so if those 5,000 people convert, and many of them will convert when the engine runs, many of them will convert when we do first flight, and a lot of them, there'll be a long tail. They'll want approvals in their country, they'll want 5 years of service history. Everybody's got their own criteria, it's own fine. So the question for the individual is just, how long do you want to wait, right? If you look at the numbers at the moment, when our first customers joined us, the wait was about 3 years, because we've got no backlog, but we thought we'd got about a 3-year program in front of us. And we've added a lot of scope to the program since then, and the timelines have expanded as a result of that. But now we've got a very limited amount of development left to do, but we've got almost a 2-year backlog of production, and we know that's going to go up very rapidly the moment we hit these deadlines, these milestones rather. And so it's for people to choose now, for the sake of what is a relatively small amount of money for anybody that is in helicopters today. It's not a small amount of money, it's a lot of money. But for people that are in helicopters today, they're spending that kind of money several times a year just running what they've got today. So it's for people to choose for themselves how far down the queue they want to be, and how long they want to be waiting for their machine, because I don't think we can take the production volume seriously any higher than 1,000 a year. I don't think there's any precedent for that until we've got multiple products that are going down there. So it's just down to how long do you want to wait now.
So how do you see Hill Helicopters changing the way that people view private helicopter ownership?
So I think the general aviation movement as a whole has totally lost its panache. It's not cool anymore. It's a collection of middle-aged men flying around in their quirky, aging flying machines. And what we really want to do is just to make aviating cool again. So I want people to associate our aircraft with the jet set lifestyle. I want them to see our aircraft as a trophy for all of their hard work and all of their achievements in life. I want the idea of flying to be accessible. I want you to be able to weave flying into your daily life and have a machine that supports that. And then I want it to be a rational and an achievable thing to say, okay, you want to go to Cornwall, let's go in the helicopter. Yeah, you want to go to Europe, let's go in the helicopter, because we've made the whole general aviation experience so connected and simple that's an achievable thing for our customer base to do. So I want to make it aspirational. I want new people. I want the huge volume of people that own 20 supercars to suddenly be turned back onto aviation again, and you're only going to get that by making the product good enough. And so I just want to make it cool, and then I want general aviation to be able to take you to places you could have never imagined going, and I want it to make every day to feel like you're a rock star or a movie star, and even the machines we've got today can make you do that. But it's just not obvious to people that are not part of GA. And the moment you make the product good enough, it will be. And so I want to make aviation cool again.
So HX50 and HC50 are just the start. You're a young guy, you've got a long roadmap ahead of you. Can you give us a vision of what the next 25 years for Hill looks like?
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time tonight talking about how difficult building this manufacturing platform has been, giving ourselves the ability to build general aviation aircraft. But of course, what we've actually created is now an opportunity to build any kind of general aviation aircraft that we want. So HX and HC50 are really just the start of a family of aircraft. We have our own engine technology that's cost effective. We have our own flight instrumentation that's cost effective. We have the ability to make all the drivetrains and the structures. We have everything. And so the obvious next step, which is really just a an extension of the 50 series is to take our platform into instrument conditions. So I want to get the single engine instrument approvals for HC50, because I think that the loss of that for single engine helicopters has been a really negative effect. We used to be able to do it, and then seemingly well-meaning regulatory changes have had the opposite effect by driving people to stay VFR in conditions that are not VFR. So we do that next. And then the very next thing after that is to grow the helicopter and do a twin engine 8-seat version that I think could be seen as a super single. So a machine where you use all the power of both the engines, have an incredible lifting capability, have a really capable, almost like a bigger single that's actually a twin, and then also a really capable Category A machine that can do a lot of the roles that profoundly more expensive helicopters do today. So our immediate interest after picking up the additional approvals for HC50 would be to go to HC80, which is a kind of 8-seat twin engine machine, somewhere around the top of part 27, so 3,175 kilos, or maybe just into part 29, depending on what we do with the engines. And that's the first move. But of course, with a manufacturing platform and with a GA industry that's ripe for reform, then the market is really screaming out for some cost-effective turboprop aircraft. So we also have plans to use the GT50 engine in a single engine fixed wing machine, so a pressurized high performance sort of 6-seat aircraft that'll get north of 300 knots, and then also a twin engine, almost like a baby business jet, but in turboprop format, that's a little bit bigger, a little bit more refined, can go a bit higher and a bit faster. And so those are the first 3 additional products that we foresee. There's other things that I'd want to do beyond that, but they'd all require more engines, so the whole cycle repeats. So we'll see how long it takes us to get through that stuff. But I think with those 4 markets, aside from the really low end stuff, the entry level aircraft and the trainers and things, I think you could put a product in all of the key slots in the general aviation industry that speak to people that buy aircraft today. And I think the beauty of the fixed wing and the helicopters is the fact that the fixed wing fulfills a very different mission. If you want to travel short and intermediate distances, point to point quickly, you take the helicopter. But if I want to cross Europe, you're going to be a lot more time effective doing that in a high-speed turboprop. And you also want the flexibility of just getting above the weather. Just get above the weather and go, because if the weather gets that bad, you're going airport to airport anyway, even in a helicopter. So it's the perfect companion to the lifestyle that we're promoting about what the future of general aviation can be for sort of business people and aircraft owner operators. So that's really the roadmap that I see at the moment. I've got no doubt that it'll change as our understanding of the market evolves and as the environment changes. But you could expect us to parallel track all 3 of those aircraft through development because of the scale of the facility that we've now built here. So let's get the first one over the line. There's no mission creep. We're not doing any work on any of those things. It's just an obvious opportunity that you've got when you can do all of these things. So at the moment, deliver on what we've promised, get it working properly, get it safely into service, get all the service and support infrastructure in place around the world, so we're looking after our customers properly. And while that's going on, the engineering team upstairs will be creating a new generation of aircraft that can uplift the next 3 segments that we're interested in across the broader general aviation space.
Have you booked one of your Hill Helicopters presentations yet? If you haven't, you should do so. Ruben and I do them every single day online. We tell you everything you want to know about the helicopter and how to pre-order it under special conditions. What's it going to feel like for you? This is the last question for you, Jason, tonight. Thanks for your time. What's it going to feel like for you when your first batch of customers lifts off from the Hill factory for the first time with their new machines?
I think it will be an amazing and quite overwhelming sense of personal and human satisfaction. That'll be the moment when we've delivered on all of the promises, when we've come good on all of the huge amount of trust that these people have invested on us, and we've shown that we've had the mettle to stand true through all of the naysaying and the negativity. And I think I'll have a huge sense of optimism about now what we can do with the future of general aviation, because having got the first ones out the door, qualified, working properly, customers satisfied and beginning their new life with their helicopters, I might take a few days off, but after that we get back to work on making sure those machines are supported properly, expanding the product family, and driving forward the improvements to the rest of this industry that we all care so much about. But I think that day will be one of the most magical days of my life, and I think it'll just be a tired but very satisfied, warm glow. It'll be a lovely day. I might finish early that day.